Meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 91 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Before we proceed, I simply want to remind members to be very careful when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbour's microphone is turned on. Earpieces placed too close to a microphone are one of the most common causes of sound feedback, which is extremely harmful to the interpreters and causes serious injury. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, we will study the subject matter of Supplementary Estimates B 2324, votes 1B, 5B and 10B under the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I would like to welcome our first panel of witnesses representing the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. We have with us Annette Gibbons, Deputy Minister, Richard Goodyear, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer. We have Adam Burns, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programme Sector, and Mr. Chris Henderson, Deputy Commissioner of Operations for the Canadian Coast Guard. Thank you for taking the time to appear today. Ms. Gibbons, you have up to 5 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and that we are grateful for the opportunity to be here. The colleagues with me have already been introduced, so I won't introduce them a second time. But I would like to add that following my remarks, we will be happy to answer any questions you may have about our department's Supplementary Estimates B for 2023-24.
Oceans Canada and the Canadian Coast Guard are seeking $356.4 million through Supplementary Estimates B for 23-24. This consists of $340.5 million in voted appropriations, as well as $15.9 million in statutory appropriations. Taken together, this represents an 8% increase to our planned budget spending this fiscal year. The $340.5 million increase in voted authorities can be mainly attributed to the following areas: $133.3 million to advance reconciliation on Indigenous rights and fisheries issues, $49.4 million to continue implementing the fish and fish habitat protection provisions of the Fisheries Act, $42.1 million for a Canadian Coast Guard multi-purpose vessel project, and $24.7 million to continue protecting species at risk. A further $91 million is being requested for 20 additional items with lower funding requirements, as well as technical adjustments such as transfers to and from other government departments. In terms of the $15.9 million in statutory appropriations, this amount is required for updated compensation and benefit forecasts for our employees. The funding being requested through Supplementary Estimates B for 2023-24 will help Fisheries and Oceans Canada and the Canadian Coast Guard fulfill its mission while continuing to deliver the many essential services that we deliver for Canadians. Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais...
Mr. Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity to update you on the recent spending reductions that have been identified across our department. As you know, when the 2023 budget was tabled last April, it included plans to reduce federal government spending. At the time, the savings generated by the Government Spending Refocus Initiative were expected to total $15.4 billion over 5 years, with $4.5 billion to follow. On the 9th of November, the President of the Treasury Board tabled the Supplementary Estimates B for 2023-24 in the House of Commons. These estimates included the first update on how the Government of Canada is reducing its planned spendings. Specifically, it detailed how $500 million in funding for travel, consulting, and professional services has been refocused and removed from the 2023-24 budgets of 68 departments.
Le MPO et la garde côtière canadienne ont contribué à cet exercice. Je peux annoncer que plus de 25,7 millions de dollars de dépenses ont été gelés dans l'ensemble de notre ministère. Étant donné qu'il ne s'agit que de la première tranche d'un effort pluriannuel de réduction des dépenses publiques, nous nous tournons déjà vers l'avenir pour déterminer où des économies supplémentaires peuvent être réalisées au sein de notre ministère au cours des années suivantes. En fin de compte, ce travail permettra de réorienter nos dépenses vers les priorités qui comptent le plus pour les Canadiens.
We're getting the French translation on the English channel. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ultimately, this work will help refocus our spending so it's going to the priorities that matter most to Canadians. In the meantime, Fisheries and Oceans Canada and the Canadian Coast Guard remain committed to the efficient and prudent spending of taxpayer dollars and to being accountable and transparent in our ongoing reporting to Canadians and parliamentarians. Before closing, I want to briefly mention the Government of Canada's recent fall economic statement and how it impacts our department. I want to specifically highlight how 4 additional weeks of employment insurance regular benefits will be available to eligible seasonal workers. Claims established between September 2023 to September 2024 will be eligible for this coverage, which will cost approximately $69.8 million over 3 years. And fishery workers are a primary beneficiary of the EI seasonal regime. Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to present the Department's Supplementary Estimates B. My colleagues and I are happy to answer any questions you have related to this work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to our first round of questions with Mr. Small for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Ms. Gibbons, the Minister's mandate letter states, and I quote, that she's to work with to make new investments and develop a conservation strategy to restore and rebuild wild Atlantic salmon. Last year, salmon anglers asked for an 8-week extension to the River Guardian program. The Minister provided a 4-week extension for basically to supply half the Guardians. So basically, the Minister provided a quarter of what was asked for. Now, you just stated that you had an 8% increase in your budget, and DFO's budget's increased since 2015 by close on $5 billion. Why was basically a $2 million ask to provide protection for Atlantic salmon in line with what was in the Minister's mandate letter not provided in Newfoundland and Labrador?
So the funding that we receive as we go through our approvals at Treasury Board, it's all dedicated to particular activities. And so, you know, we have some flex in our budgets, but we have a certain amount for each activity, and that's the amount that we have.
So it's been reported that Guardians were observing illegal nets, and when they came to the end of their shift, they were told to go home because there was no budget for overtime. So if the budget's not going to provide for these CMP workers, these individuals, to carry out their duties to have successful outcomes, what's the point of it all?
Well, we have all of our activities planned out over a year, right? And we do, as we see the need to make changes within a year, we'll make changes. But at any given point in time, each program activity has its budget, and they work within the budget that they have. And that's how the money gets allocated to us, right? So, as I said, we have some flexibility, but we can't take money from, a program that's meeting another commitment or another mandate of the department to put it in another area, right? We have to progress on all of the different activities that we're mandated to do.
So you're telling me that with an 8% increase in your budget, that you couldn't find $2 million to protect these precious Atlantic salmon stocks in Newfoundland and Labrador?
So, sir, Mr. Chair, there's lots of different priorities that we try to meet with the resources that we have. increase would have been for specific activities. As I said, you know, we have to keep moving the money on the things that were allocated to do with it, right?
But wouldn't you think that the money would be spent in line with what's laid out in the mandate letter?
Well, there's lots of different things that have funding requirements associated with them in the mandate letter, as well as in the standing mandate of the department, all of the ongoing things that are not new commitments. And we have to make sure that we have the budget to do those things as well as the things that are new commitments.
So last week here in committee, it was laid out that Product of Canada mackerel produced in 2023 are on the market. Did your organization, did DFO, see that testimony?
I did not see that testimony. I'm sure that there are people in my department who did.
Okay. All right. So Fisheries and Ocean Canada is requesting over $10 million to renew the Marine Spatial Planning Program, as outlined in Budget 2023. How much of that money is being spent to identify wind energy sites?
I don't think that funding is, it's about different regions, and some of those regions would be places that would be good sites for wind energy and that are being considered for that. But it is about planning over the region, right, and for all of the activities in a region. The objective there is to just have a better understanding of where are the very sensitive ecosystem areas, where are the fishing grounds, you know, really understanding well where there is scope for different types of activities.
So, how much of that money is being directed to prevent conflict between the fishing industry and wind energy developers?
Well, certainly the discussions between those different groups of stakeholders would be captured in the funding that we use. We use part of that money for engagement with all of the different stakeholders who are using a given marine area.
So with this program, are you more concerned with protecting the livelihoods of fishers, or to justify their displacement from their traditional fishing grounds in favor of renewable energy projects?
We're trying to find a way forward that uses the ocean in a sustainable way for all of the people who are interested in the use of the ocean in a particular area.
So, have you committed any of that $10 million to groups like the FFAW to enable them to represent their stakeholders in these discussions?
I'm not sure if there has been money that has flowed in that way, Mr. Chair. I think the money is to set up planning processes, but whether or not it has gone to individual organizations like that for them to participate in the process, I'm not sure. We can come back with an answer on that.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Small. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Chair, to Ms. Gibbons. Ms. Gibbons, could you provide to the committee at a later date what branches of the department benefited from the budgetary increases since 2015? There was a number given, I believe you used it, the budget in DFO increased by $8 billion. Could you provide, in general terms, to the committee those areas of the ministry that the majority of those funds went to?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It would have been distributed all across, but certain areas more than others,
Yeah, well, there was
for
two
sure.
specific areas that had received significant expenditure reductions, cutbacks under the previous government, protection and ScienceNet. So I would like to know how the department has moved forward on bringing those to levels required, because everybody knows when they appear before this committee, protection comes at the top, conservation. There will be no fishery on either coast without effective conservation. So I would like to know that. Then with that, Mr. Chair, Ms. Gibbons, could you give just a short response on if you didn't receive the $346 million, what would give?
What would give?
A lot of essential services come under your ministry. FPGA, Coast Guard, Search and Rescue. host. So yes, what would give?
Well, I mean, the biggest item in the supplementary estimates is funding for various treaties and reconciliation agreements that we have. Those are on the East Coast, on the West Coast, different parts of the country. And so certainly being able to make good on the commitments in those areas this fiscal year would be a big challenge for us. I think that, just given the timing of supplementary estimates being December with 4 months left in the fiscal year, I mean, we would just be in a bit of a crisis mode, actually trying to figure out what we stop doing between now and then, because we've made commitments in various areas. And
Okay, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair, Ms. Gibbons. Could you elaborate on the additional money for the Canadian Coast Guard, especially as it relates to the multi-purpose vessel program? Could you inform the committee how that is going and why it's extremely important? Because if you're a fisher in distress, you really want to see the Coast Guard. So it's important to have adequate vessels properly crewed. So could you give a general overview to the committee where we're at on that ambitious program?
Sure. And of course, the supplementary estimates number for the multipurpose vessels projects is just a very, very small piece of what we're doing under the National Shipbuilding Strategy to replace the Coast Guard fleet. And so we're at different stages with all sorts of different types of vessels fit for different purposes at the 3 shipyards that are building the vessels. We've already had several vessels delivered under the strategy, fishery research vessels, a lot of vessels for the Coast Guard to effectively support fishers in distress and other Canadians on the water. We are, with the multi-purpose vehicle in particular, we're at the stage of design of the vessel. And these are very long, detailed processes that require a lot of back and forth, so really critical that we continue that process. And of course, each ship project and then each vessel within a given type of ship, it takes a certain amount of time to do all of the planning, all of the design, and then, buying the construction materials, securing those from different suppliers, wherever they may be, and then actually starting the work in the shipyard and all of the outfitting, which takes a tremendous amount of time, and lots of phasing with the other vessels.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Based on your answer, how has the department been impacted by change, by the changing dynamics of search and rescue to Coast Guard? Is it, can you give a bit of an overview to the committee? Are those demands increasing, obviously, or what the Coast Guard has to prepare for? Then the other part of that same question I'd like in the short time is the demands that you're experiencing in the areas of conservation and protection. How has it changed? We're in the technological age. The whole issue of illegal and that is, I take it, is impacting. The day of the traditional conservation officer coming out in uniform visiting may have changed. So if you could just, my last time, if you could brief the committee briefly on how your department is reacting to those changes.
Sure. So I'll give a couple of examples on the Coast Guard. The change, certainly we're trying to spend more time in the Arctic. Both from an expression of sovereignty, but also engagement with the communities in the Arctic and the economic interests of the Canadians and the people who live in the Arctic. So having the capacity to break ice and be present in the Arctic, do our research in DFO. More months of the year is one change. Also, just really making sure that we have vehicles that are fit for different purposes, hence the multi-purpose vehicle, right, which is able to do a variety of different things, including breaking ice. In terms of change and technology with our conservation protection function, one of the things I would say that we've had great success with, and I believe the committee heard about recently, is our dark vessel detection platform, a piece of technology that we developed and are deploying with other countries around the world to be able to monitor illegal fishing. on the high seas and close to different countries' shores. And we recently signed an agreement with the Philippines to that effect for them to deploy the dark vessel platform. So that's one example of how we're using that. And the department, like all departments these days, is looking at, as an example, how do we deploy AI effectively in terms of our various functions, in terms of our corporate functions, HR, finance. So that's something that we're of course at the beginning of, but doing work on as well.
We'll go to Madam Deputy now for 6 minutes or less, please.
Monsieur le Président, merci à nos
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses as well. I really appreciate your presence. I understand that this is never a simple exercise to carry out. You have a very large department, and it's a complex one, and I'm continuously learning about it myself. I would like to speak about the shrimp fishers and impatience. Well, it's not quite impatience they're experiencing. I would say they're somewhat desperate at this point. They are waiting some sign from your department about the moratorium, the closure. This will be sad news for them. Do you foresee support measures? Well, to start with, they'd like an answer soon. They'd like to know what's to expect. But do you have anything among your voted appropriations or statutory to allow them to use EI regular benefits or other benefits? Not everyone is eligible, of course. And do you think that the decision will be dramatic for them? Yes, well, we're right in the midst of examining this situation for the fishers, and we're studying the science on this with the shrimp fishers this year in order to make our decisions quickly for 2024. We'll be meeting the shrimp fishers a little later this week. As for support measures, as you know, at Fisheries and Oceans, we have a number of programs that are specific to certain groups of fishers, and we are also working with our colleagues in other departments as well, at the federal level as well as the provincial level, to really identify the best ways to support the fishers. And within DFO, we are looking at what flexible measures we have that we could make use of to support the fishers once we will have a decision about the fishery for 2024. It's a situation where it's difficult to pay for regular overhead in that fishery, quite expensive, the fuel, for example. So we are looking for ways to offer some flexibility at the license level and see how fishers might work together as well. These are the sorts of things we have done before, a sort of a buddying system and so on. During the cod fishery closure, support was offered. And I think that shrimp is a similar disaster, really, proportionally speaking, and it affects Quebec in great measure. My question, and of course I'm here to represent Fishers of Quebec, and this is an area of business that I appreciate greatly. I come from an island, and I know what fishing's all about. So do you foresee for the Fisheries of Quebec any special consideration, not because the others aren't worthy of interest, but because, right now we're speaking specifically of Quebec fishers and, the alternatives, there are other fish that the could fish, for example, such as the redfish. And, they're saying, look, we'd just like to know what's around the corner, what's on the horizon, redfish, rockfish, or, what's going to happen to us. So do you have anything that you could share with them this morning? I can't say anything specific this morning, but we are looking for what measures we could use and how much flexibility we have within our systems to support them. Much appreciated. I hope they've heard that. I have a few seconds left. As for the Canada Coast Guard now, and of course we discussed that topic last year. There's a good deal of litigation, cases waiting in the backlog as of years now. Have you any news on this? Are there any of these that are being settled or will soon be settled, or can people eventually see clearly through this litigation regarding the Canada Coast Guard? More specifically, yes. I know that there are people who've been waiting for 6 or 7 years. Are you speaking of employees? Oh, I see. All right. I'm sorry. I thought, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't provide you with much context there. My apologies. Yes, without mentioning anyone in particular, of course, we are making good progress on litigation or grievances, basically, employee grievances that have been filed. And some years ago, you're right, this is a priority for us to solve these matters. And I think we're progressing. Would you like to add something? Yes, thank you. It is true that we have solved a great number of cases at the departmental level, about 1,800 cases are open, and for the Coast Guard, about 650, which are still files that haven't yet been closed, but we are working closely with the unions, negotiating timelines and procedures and processes to improve basically the way we handle these matters. There are some of the cases which were registered years ago or longer ago. It's true. We do have priorities among them for harassment, for example, or violence when cases involve harassment and violence. But as I say, we're working with the unions to improve the situation overall. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bien.
For 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to our witnesses. Mr. Chair, if I was able to do so, I would most certainly take a moment to acknowledge that we do have some others here. If I were able to, I would definitely acknowledge that we have Chief Murphy Abraham from Lake Babine First Nations, as well as Dominic Nuvette from legal counsel. And then from the Kittilas First Nations, we also have Chief Counselor Glenn Bennett and Dr. David Try. So just to mention, if I were able to acknowledge their presence, I would most certainly do so. With that, I have some questions today, Deputy Minister Gibbons. My first question, as you know, Ms. Gibbons, the First Nations in Northwest BC are, as you know, stewards of the land and water and have been for millennia, and are, of course, experts on sockeye salmon migration in the waters. They know the importance of ensuring that the keystone species is protected for future generations. And today, I wanted to ask some questions around where we are currently at with treaty negotiations, with working alongside First Nations on this necessary work to protect sockeye salmon. I understand that First Nations in Northwest BC are nearing completion of treaties with British Columbia and Canada, including chapters related to fisheries. And I'm wondering, Ms. Gibbons, if you could provide the committee with an update on how the fisheries-related provisions in those treaties are progressing.
Thank you very much. So, as you know, these are very long negotiation processes, and you know we want to make sure that we take the time to really understand what it is that communities want. Of course, you know, fisheries are in most cases stocks are not in increasing abundance, right? I mean, there are some, but in general, we have declines in many of the stocks on the coast, and so it's very challenging to be able to meet all of the requirements, all of the requests and requirements of communities. So, you know, there's a requirement for money to be able to offset the cost of acquiring allocations, to be able to meet obligations and quotas. So, you know, there's a huge financial component to what we do, and we're taking the time to really identify what all those amounts are and go through our
Thank you,
approval
Ms.
processes.
Gibbons. Thank you. Just because I only have such limited
Sure,
time, I
yeah.
want to make sure that I get to more specifics. So what is the status of the treaty specific to the Kitsillas First Nations around fisheries-related work that's required to happen?
So I think that we are largely there. I think there's just a little bit of final work to do on our part.
Ms. Gibbons, last year you had met with those from the Lake Babine Nation around the term sheet, which was prepared jointly, cooperatively by the nation and DFO, and they were told that it would be going to Cabinet in the spring of 2023 for approval so they can partner with the federal government to do the vital work to protect species in the fisheries. What happened between the time where you sat and had that discussion and made those commitments and now, and where are we currently at?
So we are, as I explained to the chief yesterday, we are working through our approval processes still, and unfortunately, these things do take time.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. We're seeing a lot of movement, and what I'm hearing from many First Nations is that we are seeing a lot of movement happening by the provincial British Columbia government to work alongside First Nations to see positive movement through reconciliation, working with First Nations on this important work. But we're seeing what I'm hearing described as a stalling, hitting a wall on the federal end. And I'm wondering if you can explain why we're seeing such almost deferred action. Why are we not seeing the action necessary? I understand it takes time, but it's getting to a point where there's some serious concerns. And we know, just to your point that you made at the beginning, that the stocks are dwindling. Now more than ever, we need to see the federal government working alongside First Nations who understand these stocks better than those who are here in Ottawa. And so why the delay, and what can be done today? What commitment can be done starting today to assure First Nations that this work is going to happen moving forward?
Well, we've been at the tables with these communities for it's years, right? And we are reaching a stage now of conclusion on many. There are little pieces that we need to tie up on our end, and as I said, it is unfortunate, and I appreciate that communities really want to reach the final stages here, but we still have a little bit of work to do at the federal level to get everything right. And do this with all of the authorities that we need. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank all four of you from the department for being here today. I'll start out with Ms. Gibbons. Ms. Gibbons, starting in 2022-23, DFO started receiving $92 million spread over 6 years for implementation of the Impact Assessment Act that the Supreme Court has now deemed to be largely unconstitutional. How has the Supreme Court assessment of the Impact Assessment Act affected DFO's implementation of the Act?
So we continue to work on the cases that we're working on, and as the government has announced, there is a work underway to figure out the way forward, given the reference case on the Act. I think that at the end of the day, the DFO's work on assessing impacts to projects that come through will continue on. There will be adjustments, depending on the changes to the Impact Assessment Act. But what we will still have a role to play in assessments of impacts on fish and fish habitat.
Do you know what that role will be until the court, in light of the court's decision and until the new revisions to the act have come out, or are you still just waiting to see?
We're working through that with our colleagues in other departments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Henderson, has the Coast Guard signed off on the final design of the Arctic and offshore patrol ships to be built by Irving Shipyards?
Thank you for the question. Steel was cut on the 7th of the AOPS in August, and so construction of the ship is well underway. There were remaining a small number, like 1 or 2 design changes that still needed to be worked out. I'll give you an example of one of them just to paint the picture. Davits for the launching and recovery of the boats were still being worked through. But they weren't affecting the overall construction design, and they weren't the resolution of them wasn't going to change the final configuration.
So they have finally started construction. Okay, thank you. Has the Coast Guard signed off on the final design and final design of the 2 polar icebreakers being built by Seaspan and Davies?
The final designs are not underway. The design work isn't finished. No.
You still haven't. Is there any idea when that design work might be finished?
I'm sorry, I don't have the specific information, but we can get that for you.
If you could provide that to the committee in writing, that would be great. Thank you.
We are working on it with the first one at Vancouver Shipyards. We are in the middle of that. With the one that will be built at Davie, not yet.
You're not even working on the design phase yet?
Well, we're still working through. We just signed what we call our umbrella agreement with Davie Shipyards, and so we're now in the process of working on more detailed contracts.
If you could provide a timeline to the committee
Sure.
on the completion
Yes,
of that
Mr. Chair.
of those design phases, thank you very much. Ms. Gibbons, for 8 years, I've been raising the alarm of the threats of aquatic invasive species, or in particular zebra and quagga mussels, into waters in British Columbia. When you and the minister were here on October 26th, I reiterated the need for the federal government to provide fair allocation of federal resources for AIS prevention in BC. Last month, 4 fellow BC MPs and I sent a letter to the minister pressing her to act and ensure fair allocation of resources. Multiple conservation organizations have also wrote the minister pressing on this matter. Has the minister discussed actions for and rebalancing of the allocations for aquatic invasive species prevention with you?
We have had discussions recently with the minister on aquatic invasive species, and in terms of rebalancing the budget, not that specificity, but we have had discussions with her on what our priorities are. And
why does DFO continue to ignore BC's waters and the threats, with only a 1.7% of DFO funding for AIS activities across Canada being allocated to the Pacific region? Only 1.75%.
I'd be happy to take that number back, Mr. Chair. I had numbers that I had seen. Now it's going back some time. I thought that number was higher than that, so that's a little bit of a surprise, but happy to take it back and have a look.
Thank you. Is my time?
Right on the mark. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. To paraphrase the late Henry Kissinger, I hope I have some questions for your answers today. You'll have to think about that for a second. Lapsed funding. Does the DFO return money to the Treasury at the end of a fiscal year?
There's several things that happen. First of all, for
a brief answer would be fine.
Our operating budgets, we are allowed to keep a certain percentage, and so if we have the money remaining, we keep up to that percentage. For other items, we have to ask for it to be reprofiled, and in many cases, those are approved, and in some cases, they are not approved.
But order of magnitude, how much money are we talking about at the end of a fiscal year that could either be, repurposed, reprofiled, et cetera?
So the operating budget carry forward is 5%. And then on other, like on grants and contributions, on capital, we have to request specifically from finance to have a reprofile.
See, this is going back to Mr. Small's question. You know, he was talking about a relatively small amount to improve enforcement. Do you need some changes to get the kind of flexibility, for instance, to, you know, take some of this money that would otherwise not be used and reuse it to things that you hear from street level that are priorities? Do you need the flexibility there?
I mean, as I said, we have some flexibility, but we do, money comes with a mandate attached to it. New money comes with a mandate attached to it. Of course, the department has its ongoing budget that we get year over year, our A-base, we call it. But there are various things that we're required to do under our enabling statutes and so forth. So for different functions, you know, we definitely do increase the budgets where we need to, where there's a really gap, a critical gap in health and safety, for example. We will look at that. But, you know, the flexibility, we can't not do part of the mandate to put all the money on another part of the mandate.
But if you're not able to fulfill, you know, certain activities under the mandate just simply because, you know, the staff isn't there, things aren't ready, et cetera, it would seem that a bit of flexibility then to repurpose that money to something else that does need doing right now would make some sense. So this is something we can obviously take up with the minister. Has there been a marked shift in the DFO's major priorities over the last, say, 5 years?
Well, certainly we're very, very focused on fish and fish habitat protection. So we've had a lot of increase in budgets to be able to do more to protect fish and fish habitat. We've had a lot of money come in, for example, the Coast Guard, the fleet renewal. So for a variety of different priorities, there has been a significant increase in funding for sure.
Where would we be in that regard on stock assessments and enforcement? You know, has there been a change, positive or otherwise, in funding available for those two activities?
Yeah, there has been additional money come in for stock assessment, for the science work related to it, for enforcement for sure. Yeah.
Now, maybe Officer Henderson, you could speak to the multi-purpose Coast Guard vessels that are coming in. In past hearings, we've heard some questions about whether or not trying to be multi-purpose means that things like stock assessments or other, you know, investigations, research that the DFO needs, that at the very least these new vessels might cause things to be done differently than before, which then kind of messes up the continuity of the data that's being produced. Any comments on that?
Well, thank you for the question. The purpose of the multi-purpose vessel is to be as flexible as it can possibly be, and it is being designed with science very much in mind. And we will be working very closely with our science colleagues to make sure that the new ships are able to do the science that needs to be done. The offshore fisheries science vessels that we have now are the mechanism that we're using to ensure the continuity of the scientific data on stocks through comparative trawling that's occurring as we speak. The multi-purpose vessels in the future are going to be supporting the full range of science as articulated by science, but also have designed into it that flexibility to do anything else that is within the mandate or is required to support other government departments.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. You're right on the mark. So we'll go now to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. In the same line of thinking, for some time, we've heard of bringing back the redfish. This was studied under Minister Murray. We have a new minister, and we ourselves had a convention about fisheries, and everyone was there. I can tell you in Quebec, people are sort of depressed. And then you go to New Brunswick, they're allowed to fish a certain number of redfish, and algae, of course, is also a new economic product. It's like there are a number of players, sort of right, left, and center of Quebec, but there's not much going on for Quebec. So what are your priorities for Quebec in the months to come? Fishery alternatives, support, funding, or other projects? What are your priorities for Quebec? All right, so speaking of redfish, I think we will have a decision on redfish fisheries very shortly. The minister intends to announce a decision in the months to come, the next months to come. Yes, I can't give you an exact date, but I could say soon, perhaps within weeks. As for Quebec, like most of the regions in the east of the country, Quebec will be involved, of course, in redfish fishing and fisheries. There's a lot of fisheries in Quebec, specifically the snow crab, lobster, and of course we have the pinnipeds eating the lobster, but that's another matter, isn't it? Yes, of course, the pinnipeds, that is an issue, and the minister makes a good deal of that, speaks of it regularly, of the pinnipeds eating the fish, devouring the fish. But there are discussions ongoing about strategies for fisheries in Quebec. The minister is holding discussions with Quebec fishers. Indeed, this week we will be discussing strategies for the future. It's an ongoing dialogue.
We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Gibbons, again. My first question is, I'm getting people asking me about when the federal government will be coming to the table with money for BC's Watershed Security Fund to restore and secure watersheds for the health of BC's people, salmon, and the economy. What does that look like? What is the timeline? When will we see the proper investment into BC's Watershed Security Fund?
So we'll have to come back to you with a written answer on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gibbons, recently along the west coast of Vancouver Island, we saw a boat that was, I don't actually know exactly what happened, but 2 people, whether overturned, I think it's still being investigated, but a boat was in distress. The mariners were in distress. One of the mariners has since been found and passed away, and the other one is still missing. And unfortunately, what emerged in the aftermath of these incidents is that it was discovered that the Coast Guard's radio direction finding capabilities, which of course are based on well-established technology, has been allowed to fall into such a state of disrepair that it is no longer functional. Can you speak to this around how we could have let this technology fail mariners at sea and ensuring their safety?
I'm going to ask Chris to provide more information, but my understanding is that this is a technology that is perhaps not as effective as it once was, and so.
Sorry, I think.
I think it'll come on.
Keep my hands away.
There you go.
Thank you for the question. The direction finding technology is one of many tools that are used in search and rescue. Yes, as a result of reductions in the past, the direction finding capability had basically degraded to the point where it was not functioning. We now have a project in place, a $42.5 million project in place that's been initiated and will be and continue over the next 6 years, to replace the 48 direction finding antennas and add a 49th. So the system is in train to replace it. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it really is, direction finding is one of a fairly deep toolkit that we use to help locate people in distress at sea.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses. Just start off, maybe you could table a document at a further time with the committee. I'd like to know the recently announced 5,200 roughly traps awarded is the third year in a row. I think it is temporary. I don't know how long temporary becomes when it becomes permanent. Moderate livelihood licenses. Could you table with this committee the banked licenses that came from the control numbers and the LFAs that were used for that, please? As well, could you also table with this committee on the license buyback program in the East Coast, how much has been spent, how many licenses have been bought, and what for what species, please? Now, my first question is to the Deputy Commissioner. In 2008, the Polar Class 1 icebreaker was announced at a cost of $720 million. Now we're up to, I believe it is 3 that we're going to build. And 2 years ago, the estimate by the Parliamentary Budget Officer was that that is now a cost of $7.2 billion or $2.4 billion per ship. So that's going from $720 million for one ship to $2.4 billion, I think it was, for per ship times 3. In that report, he estimated that if there was a 1-year delay, that would add another $235 million to the construction of it. And if it was a 2-year delay, which we're almost up to, that it would add almost another $500 million. Have you updated the financial numbers to know how over budget these icebreakers are since they haven't started construction?
Do you want me to start? Because
On the icebreakers?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I would just say we're still working on the numbers for sure of what the costs will be on all of these projects. I think it's important to note, and I know the committee is aware of this, but we're building an industry in this country, a shipbuilding industry, and the numbers that we had used to estimate in the past were based on the sort of run rate of established shipyards. You know, where obviously your costs are going to be different. Your cost structure is going to be different when you're regularly building a class of ship. You're going to have an efficiency rate, which we are now seeing, for example, at Irving on the AOPS. Each ship is costing less than the one before because they are achieving that efficiency.
Certainly I understand that, but one of the reasons we have these in 2 shipyards that the PBO identified is one of the reasons for the cost overruns. But it sounds like you don't know what the costs are yet, and it's change orders and change orders and change orders and delay and delay. This is 2008. We're now almost 2024, and we still haven't got an agreed design, so we can estimate that to go up. Well, I'll move on to my next question. My next question, here last week, the Canada Border Services Agency said that they didn't believe that any Elvers left this country across the border. Do you agree with that?
I think we think that Elvers do leave in general. I think they are best positioned to comment on that, but certainly there is I don't know if.
But in their testimony, they didn't even know that the Elver season's over now. So does DFO actually communicate with CBSA when there is poaching going on and tell them to secure the borders?
We do.
So why haven't they?
I can't answer that for them, sir.
Okay. The recent report by the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development indicated that DFO is failing to monitor the fishery harvests and collect the catch data required for fisheries, and DFO hasn't delivered corrective measures that it committed to 7 years ago when these issues were first brought forward by the Auditor General of Canada. And we're currently studying IUU fishery. This has exposed DFO's failure in this area. What is the department doing now that it's been exposed yet again from the Auditor General and the Environment Commissioner to fix these issues?
So it's a multi-year plan of different activities. So we do different things in each year to try to improve our ability in this area. One of the things that we're working on.
What things would you be doing since it's 7 years of failure so far?
Well, there has been some work that has been done, and and we've received funding to do that. So we've done some already, and we continue to do work. We're working on e-logs, for example, trying to make sure that we're able to introduce a system that actually works for fish harvesters.
Mr. Chair, could we request that the PBO update his report from 2021 on the Polar Class 1 icebreakers, please, and provide us with an updated estimate of the cost?
We'll now go to Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for everyone in attendance today. Couple of questions. I'll start off with the $24.7 million to continue efforts to protect species at risk. I wonder if officials can go into detail as to how that money is going to be used. That's question one. Question two is, I think it was $133 million will be allocated for reconciliation. And I wonder if we can unpack that too in terms of how the money will be used with respect to that.
Sorry, Mr. Kellaway, you were referring to the funding in the fall economic statement?
Supplementary B, supplementary estimates B contains about $24.7 million to protect species at risk. So I was looking to see how that money is going to be used. And then you referenced in your opening statement, I believe, $133 million for reconciliation. So I'm looking to unpack that as well.
Okay, sorry, yeah. So the money for species at risk is the money that was in the fall economic statement of 2022. So go ahead, Adam, you can read the...
Yeah, so that money will support the department in taking on the development of recovery plans and assessing the various species identified by COSEWIC in order to provide advice to the minister to inform decisions around listing. And in the case where a decision is taken to not list, that would also support the department in developing alternative measure plans developed under the Fisheries Act, things like rebuilding plans under our precautionary approach framework and so on. So this funding really does support the overall administration of both the Species at Risk Act as well as the alternative measures that flow in cases where decisions are taken to not list a species under the Act.
Thank you for that. Maybe go to reconciliation next, if possible.
Sure. So the reconciliation funding is a variety of different agreements that we have in place across the country, but in particular, we signed 4 new reconciliation agreements in the Atlantic this year, and so a lot of that money will be flowing under those agreements.
Also, in the supplementary estimates B, there contains, I think it's close to $5 million, maybe $4.7 million, to renew and advance clean technology measures. So I'm curious as to what sort of clean technology is captured by this particular funding allotment.
So that funding is for aquaculture clean technologies. So a variety of different activities, different types of aquaculture, but you may have an aquaculture site that is running on diesel, for example, and moving them to a cleaner source of energy would be a kind of project that we would work on. So that's one of the examples.
Okay. Anybody else and want to elaborate on that last one?
Kind of covers it, no? Mr. Chair.
Okay. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
1.5 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to stick on the aquatic side of things. I'm curious, actually, how many projects under the Nature Fund for Aquatic Species at Risk have been funded to date as a result of some pretty historic and multi-year investments.
I don't have the exact number, but that would be a very, very significant number at this point. We're doing projects all across the country under that fund. So certainly happy to give the committee a more detailed response.
Okay, thank you very much. If that can be brought back in written format, that'd be fantastic. I appreciate the time. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Callaway. We're on the mark at 12 o'clock anyway, so I'm glad you ended it when you did. You had 45 seconds, I think, left, and that's very gracious of you to give up. We'll now thank, of course, our first panel that have been here this morning, Annette Gibbons, Deputy Minister, Richard Goodyear, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, Adam Burns, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programme Sector, and of course, Deputy Commissioner of Operations for the Canadian Coast Guard, Chris Henderson. You've always been quite receptive when we invite you to come before committee, so again, thank you for your time today. We'll suspend for a moment while we switch out to panels. Adopted by the committee on January 18, 2022, the committee is resuming its study on illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the new witnesses. Please wait till I recognise you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. All comments should be addressed through the chair. I would now like to welcome our witnesses representing the BC Commercial Fishing Caucus, Mr. Jim McIsaac, Coordinator by Zoom. And from the United Fisheries Conservation Alliance, we have Colin Sproul, President. So we'll start off now for 5 minutes or less with Mr. McIsaac, please.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I'd really like to thank the committee for the invitation to speak on IUU fishing today. I'm here as the coordinator for the BC Commercial Fishing Caucus, a group of 13, the group formed 13 years ago by 14 commercial fishing organizations to support the common interests of small-scale fisheries along the BC coast. I've been involved in commercial fisheries since I was a kid, about 40 years ago. Fishing paid my way through university, and when I graduated, I stayed fishing because I loved the lifestyle, I loved the coast, I loved fishing, I loved studying fishing, and I loved providing good, healthy food to my family, my friends, and my community. I was in Japan a few weeks ago at a seafood summit, learning about their fishery. It really is a different world there. For me, IUU fishing is poaching. I was first introduced to the term 10, 12 years ago in the international context when Google announced support to create the Global Fishing Watch. They offer to provide their big data management to map international fishing effort and to shine a light on IUU fishing intrusions into EEZs. In the very earliest stages, they asked the commercial fishing sector for help to help identify different types of fishing tracks, and we did do that. Some states, Indonesia, have gone to the extreme measures to protect their EEZ, sending the Navy vessels to sink foreign fishing vessels. And aside, Indonesia has protected 80% of the TAC in their EEZ for small-scale fishers, for local small-scale fishers. I'd say Global Fishing Watch has been very successful in raising the profile of IUU fishing and helping keep foreign fleets out of EEZs. What does IUU mean in the Canadian context? 2 months ago, there was a media article on illegal tuna fishing off of west coast of Vancouver Island. I've circulated the links to those articles to the chair. DFO calls this illegal fishing. I would not. From the news article, you'd think DFO is doing a fantastic job in catching illegal fisheries inside our EEZ. They were patrolling our ocean estate off west coast of Vancouver Island, found a vessel with illegal catch, confiscated 32,000 pounds of tuna, $130,000 worth, dragged the fisherman to court, and fined him a further $6,000. Some very important facts were left out of that media article. The fisherman had legally fished tuna for over a decade, had purchased a $1,500 tuna logbook just before going out, and hailed out to DFO prior to leaving for tuna fishing. He had been fishing for almost a month and was heading in to deliver when DFO approached the vessel. In the rush to go fishing, the fisherman forgot to buy a $32 annual tuna fishing license tab. You'd think the regulator would bear some responsibility for providing a hail-out number. Or maybe they should have called him back when he ordered a $1,500 logbook. But no, here DFO gets praise for catching the vessel that had told them they were going tuna fishing, bought and filled out a tuna logbook, used legal hooks and gear, fished in an open fishing area, and spent a month on the water with their vessel identification system on so anyone could track the vessel, including DFO. They were not hiding anything. The whole incident cost the fishermen over $200,000. In court, the judge asked DFO why only they sought a $6,000 fine. He thought $60,000 would be more appropriate. DFO responded that the whole incident was based on a mistake. The judge laughed, upheld the $130,000 confiscation and $6,000 fine as submitted. This is not funny. In 2022, sockeye salmon was available for sale all along the Fraser River. You could get it off Facebook. You could get it out of the back of pickup trucks. all along the Lower Fraser. How could this be when both the commercial and FSC fisheries were closed, thought most fishermen? To me, this is IUU fishing. DFO's response was to open the commercial fishery for 6 hours to blur the illegal sales. A couple of recommendations. DFO enforcement needs civilian oversight. Left on their own, they appeared to cherry pick the easy, which is typically licensed fishermen that report out with logbooks, VMS, electronic monitoring, and leave the real poachers alone. If the committee is to use the term IUU, it should define it. Does it mean the same in local settings as it does in international? If you are licensed to fish and report your catch and found to have caught a fish too small or the wrong species, is this poaching? Canada needs to define small scale, artisanal, and subsistence fishing and define industrial fishing so that a 3,000 horsepower trawler catching 100,000 pounds in one tow is not treated the same as a 40-foot lingcod fisherman catching one fish at a time. Thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you, Mr. McIsaac. We'll now go to Mr. Sproul for 6 minutes or less, 5 minutes or less, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I speak on behalf of the Unified Fisheries Conservation Alliance. We represent more than 3,000 multi-species harvesters in the Maritime Provinces. Members of the UFCA, along with its partners in the fishery sector, are responsible for supporting 25,000 jobs and contributing $4 billion in economic activity in the Maritimes each year. The UFCA was formed to bring together many participants in the Atlantic fishery in one reasonable and cooperative voice. The UFCA recognizes the importance of cooperation with Indigenous communities and that Indigenous peoples have a right to fish for food, social, ceremonial, and commercial purposes. Today, I call the committee's attention to the presence of a massive illegal fishery taking place in the coastal bays of the Maritimes under the guise of a lawful food, social, and ceremonial fishery, particularly in St. Mary's Bay. After years of drawing attention to this problem, fishermen in southwest Nova Scotia are left outraged at the perceived complicity of DFO and saddened beyond measure for the destruction of a resource that has sustained all of our families for generations. Despite many assertions by the government since 2016 that DFO would enforce existing law, they have done anything but. We have been witnesses to a full-scale commercial fishery on one of the most important lobster spawning grounds in the world. Let me be clear. It is not now and never will be appropriate to fish on spawning grounds during the molting and breeding seasons. This misconduct is not supported by the Sparrow or Marshall decisions or by any sense of justice or sustainability. Throughout the recent assault on the resource, DFO is focused on communications and spin while hindering law enforcement objectives. Amidst these conflicting claims, let's concentrate on facts. On July 11th, the Director of Conservation and Protection for the Maritimes region told CBC News that, quote, conservation and protection is well equipped to enforce the lobster fisheries upcoming, in reference to the FSC fishery. And he went on, in terms of our capability to adequately monitor compliance of FSC licenses this summer, I can assure you that CNP does have resources to do that effectively in areas such as St. Mary's Bay. Yet, despite all of these assurances, on August 30th at the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border, authorities seized more than 8,000 lobsters from St. Mary's Bay. Revealingly, this was not due to investigative efforts by DFO, but because the truck carrying the lobsters broke down at the provincial border scale and suspicious officials there reported it. Also this fall, the UFCA has conducted overflights of Saulnier Harbour. On October 5th, we observed approximately 25,000 pounds of lobster, crated for sale and floating in the harbour. On October 13th, another 12,000 pounds. Given these huge volumes of lobster landed illegally, how can the director's statements be accurate? Fishing communities are left with only two possible conclusions. Either the department is incredibly incompetent, or they are deceiving Canadians, fishing families, and the members of this committee. Also important to note, of the charges that have been filed across the Maritimes for out-of-season fishing by frontline CNP officers, very few have been moved forward on by the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. This has left harvesters understandably suspicious that the justice process in fisheries is suffering from political interference. If the government was serious about stopping this illegal fishery, DFO could take the simple steps of conducting enforcement patrols and surveillance at the select few harbors where a majority of illegal fishing is taking place. They could follow the catch to market and end this fishery in a matter of weeks. Instead, they avoid reasonable law enforcement tactics and take actions designed to obscure reality and generate the appearance of enforcement. I can think of no better example of this than the department tasking an icebreaker to St. Mary's Bay this summer after public outrage about the illegal fishery, a ship with no ability to enforce a lobster fishery and surely a huge waste of taxpayer dollars. Most importantly, we should all recognize what stands to be lost. Although DFO has made attempts to obscure their own data, it shows a sharp decline in lobster landings in St. Mary's Bay after the failed policy objectives of this government. This is the first week of Southwest Nova Scotia's lobster fishery, the most valuable in the world. Alarmingly, reports are flooding in from across the region of extremely low landings when fishers should expect their best catches. Much of the prosperity of our coastal economy is predicated on a healthy lobster resource, and that prosperity now faces an existential threat. The loss of this fishery would devastate our communities, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike. The continued acceptance of this activity by the government does not serve the objectives of conservation or reconciliation. If DFO does not act soon, there may be no fishery left for the UFCA's members or for rights holders. The fishing families of the Maritimes demand action now, before all is lost. Chair, committee members, thank you. I invite your questions.
Thank you, sir, for that. We'll now go to Mr. Small for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming out and taking part in our study today. Mr. Sproul, first questions for Mr. Sproul, Mr. Chair. You indicated in your opening remarks that fishery stakeholders believe the government allowed IUU lobster fishing to take place this past summer. Why do you think they allowed that activity to take place?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Small. I think it's one of the most important ones that we should recognize here. You know, since 2016, there's been a ton of effort by fishing organizations in the Maritimes to deal with this issue. And throughout that, what we've gathered as an answer to that is that the government stopped enforcing the law in hopes to improve the situation at the rights reconciliation table and for the Crown Indigenous negotiators. We think it's obviously been a failed tactic, and it's not led to the successes that were hoped for.
So, is it just St. Mary's Bay that this illegal fishing activity is taking place in, or have you heard talk of other areas throughout the Maritimes that it's been happening?
Certainly it's happening all across the Maritime provinces, but particularly in St. Peter's Bay and another area of chief concern, or in St. Mary's Bay. The other area of chief concern is St. Peter's Bay in Cape Breton. We've seen a huge amount of out-of-season fishing taking place there, and the diversion of food, social, and ceremonial lobster from its rightful use for food, social, and ceremonial purposes by First Nations into the commercial market, and in a very small area like St. Peter's Bay, it's certainly starting to have a very, very important conservation concern.
So have these concerns been brought forward to DFO?
Certainly, for 8 years.
So what's their response been?
Their response has been, you know, that they intend to enforce the law, and that they intend to move forward on it, but we don't see the results. We only see the statements, but it doesn't result in effective law enforcement in St. Peter's and St. Mary's Bays.
So if indeed this is the case, what's the end result going to be of this IUU fishing for the lobster industry in the Maritimes?
Well, I think the results are already becoming evident. You know, we just saw the closure of one of the largest lobster processors in Southwest Nova Scotia, and in the media, the owners of the company said it was due to a lack of product to be processed in there. So we're already starting to see it. We've seen, you know, declining catches over the last 6 or 7 years in St. Mary's Bay and all across Southwest Nova Scotia, and the fishing industry is starting to draw a link between the incredible amount of lobster that's being removed out of season and also the damage to the breeding stock resource. So the long-term consequences are the fact that, you know, lobster fishery is the economic backbone of Nova Scotia. It's by far the most important industry, and it's the same in Prince Edward Island and in New Brunswick too. It's incredibly important to our economies, and it's incredibly important to coastal communities, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. Anything that endangers the resource needs to be taken seriously by the department. Conservation needs to come first, and ideology and politics after.
So I I heard you say that DFO officials put out a press release or spoke to the media in early July, talking about their capabilities and that they're able to enforce the law. Do you think they have the capabilities? Do you think that DFO is committing the resources to CNP that they need to enforce the law?
No, certainly not. We've seen a big decline in the enforcement presence in DFO on the water in the Maritimes. Local DFO officers relate to us that frequently they can't mount patrols because of staffing or fuel budgets or the availability of vessels. But in terms of what's taken place in St. Mary's Bay, it's not about assets, it's about intent and willingness.
Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit, Mr. Sproul?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there are just, reasonable enforcement tactics that could end the out-of-season fishing that we've, pushed for very strongly. The year before last, we saw some more concentration by CNP on going after the market for the illegal product. If the market is removed, the fisheries will end, and we think it's an easy way to deal with the problem. But I also think it revealed, the ineptitude of the department in preventing the fishing to take place in the first place, and that the summer before last, we saw some huge seizures by the Department of Lobster, hundreds and hundreds of crates at the border and at the airport. And it kind of revealed the magnitude of the fishery. This year, we didn't see those seizures take place, but we still know that the lobsters were coming out of the water.
So why do you think there would have been a difference in the CNP effort from 2022 to this past year? What do you think went on there?
Well, I can't speak for the department, but from the perspective of our members, it's that the enforcement activities that were taking place on the marketplace side of the problem were revealing the magnitude of the fishery, and that it's very hard for the department to say that an illegal fishery is not taking place on one hand, and on the other hand, make seizures of hundreds of thousands of pounds of lobsters exiting Nova Scotia.
You only got 10 seconds, Mr. Small. You'll hardly get a question out being from Newfoundland from there too. So we'll go on to the next questioner. Mr. Hardy, for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. McIsaac, do you care to add anything to Mr. Sproul's testimony so far?
I would say just have to look at what's going on with the salmon in British Columbia, and that's what to expect in your lobster fishery if the same kind of approach is taken.
Complementary enforcement. I mean, yes, we talk about DFO and what they do or don't do out in the water. To both of you, do you see the need for, or do you see evidence of, kind of the complementary enforcement on the buyers, the processors? Does FinTrack start to monitor money exchanges, et cetera, et cetera? Is any of that going on? We'll start with you, Mr. Sproul.
Well, starting back in 2016, fishery organizations in the Maritimes came together in Sambro, Nova Scotia, and we tried to bring relevant government departments to bear on the issue. CFIA, CBSA, DFO.
I'll ask for a relatively short answer because I have more questions. So.
Okay, I would say that there's certainly there's a lot of room for the government to approve on the collaboration between relevant agencies to stop the movement of the product from Nova Scotia to the marketplace.
Do the processors know what they're dealing with when this stuff comes in for them to process?
I think sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, depending on how many hands it's passed through. But certainly when the product is being landed in massive quantities out of season, there has to be a recognition at processors that it's unlawfully harvested.
Mr. McIsaac, out on the West Coast, is the issue generally perceived to be too small a deal, maybe too dangerous to enforce?
I don't think it's too small of a deal. I mean, the entire salmon fishery is pretty much closed here. There's very, very little, commercial fishery left on our coast. The processors, the largest processor in North America is, closed shop in Prince Rupert, not processing, no canning of salmon here anymore. Except for one very small processor on the island. we're a shadow of what we used to be salmon fishery. So yeah.
I've, for about the past year, I've been a subscriber to a community fishery that we probably all know well, that's Skipper Otto. Is there any aspect of the community fisheries like Skipper Otto that can either open the way for illegal fisheries or help us do something about it? Is there any reflection there, Mr. McIsaac?
Well, I think that's it's a great example of, connecting directly with legal fishing, and that's a platform where independent harvesters are making a living in kind of the face of the regulatory frame that's being put out there, and the kind of the management regime that's being created here. They closing the eyes on the poaching and just focusing on legal fishing is what I would say kind of what CNP is doing here on our coast. So yeah.
And a final question to both of you. What do the First Nations leadership say? Because obviously there's a big bright light shone on those communities as being engaged in illegal fisheries. What do they say? And do we have enough clarity on Indigenous rights, moderate livelihood, the FSC fishery, et cetera, are we really in a position to be really conclusive to know when a fishery is illegal versus something that they're entitled to do? We'll start with you, Mr. Sproul.
Can you just pose the question one more time? It was very long. I just want to make sure that I get to the flavor of exactly
we'll get to the last part. Is there enough clarity in the law around Indigenous rights?
Yeah, and certainly that's the most important part of the question. And the answer is no. There is not enough clarity under the law. I think it was clear after the second Marshall decision that the court was sending that back to the government and to the House, and that it required further negotiation. I think there's been a lot of good effort since that time by a whole bunch of successive governments to negotiate with the nations to move forward, but there needs to be good faith between the government and First Nations leaderships that access supplied to First Nations will allow people to fish, or else the solution will never become apparent.
Mr. McIsaac, can you reflect on that?
So I would say on this coast, it's outside of nations, it's individuals, and it's not just First Nations individuals that are responsible for this. So it's much broader than what you're implying there with your question.
I think I'll end there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. We'll now go to Madam Debienne for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. I will turn to you, Mr. Sproul. Are you in any conversations? Yes, can you hear me now? Good. Do you have any conversations with similar fisher specialists in Quebec about this illegal fishing that you're speaking of?
We
consider the RPPSG a very close ally, and our positions on the issue are, I would say, are very closely aligned. The issue is, has, real important implications for the future of Quebec fisheries. So we certainly cooperate fully and frequently with the RPPSG.
Et qu'est-ce que vous en déduisez?
And what do these discussions with your counterparts lead to? What do you deduce from this? You say there's many problems in Quebec. As you see, is there kind of an alliance, a grouping that could come out of this and that might be necessary to ensure that your voice is stronger?
Yes, certainly. So there is a group, a coalition in amongst people in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and RPPSG, MFU, PEI, FA, and the Gulf Fleet Planning Board, and we represent essentially the same interests in the Maritimes region. So we are, although we're not officially, both part of the same group. We certainly, our positions on the issue align, and we work frequently, together at all times. The leadership of the RPPSG has been a real strong voice for a respectful approach to integration of First Nations into the fishery, and they've also pointed out, the fallacies of how the government's moved forward on that, particularly in the LMG issue, where the minister chose to abdicate her responsibility to manage the fishery and the Rights Reconciliation Agreement. Certainly not in lines with the Marshall decision, and it's a chief concern of the RPPSG.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Either Mr. McIsaac or Mr. Sproul. I know that, well, of course, it's difficult to measure these matters. These are unreported fishes, so we can't measure them. But the percentage of that illegal fishing represents of entire fishing efforts, do you have any idea of what that might be within the total fishing from the sea and the Gulf waters, the eastern waters, let's say?
I think from a fisherman's perspective in Atlantic Canada, the whole point is that we don't know the answer to that question because the government refuses to keep any type of accurate records about FSC fisheries. Records were kept for a while until the records started to reveal the abuses of the fishery, and at that time the government stopped keeping the records. But they wouldn't represent the entirety of what the fishery really means. But, anecdotally, we've seen maybe 2 to 3 million pounds removed from St. Mary's Bay this summer, but it's really hard to pinpoint the number exactly, and that's just one location where the illegal fishing is centered.
C'est énorme, Monsieur le Président.
That's enormous, Chair, and only in that single sector and area, that seems very high. Tell me, what is the department omitting to do that it might do to better manage this issue? Is it a matter of, you brought it up yourself earlier, there's a matter of surveillance, of ensuring tighter surveillance. Should fines be higher? Should the penalties be higher? Does the department need to invest considerably in this surveillance access in order to protect the resource?
There's a really simple answer to that question. The department needs to equally enforce the law irregardless of a fisher's identity. The department needs to seize the vessels that are engaged in the out-of-season fishing for the benefit of all stakeholders in the fishery.
Merci, c'est très intéressant.
Thank you. A very interesting answer. Tell me, the fishers who are in difficult straits, and you probably have some where you are, there are many experiencing difficulties in Quebec whose fishing options are dwindling, and they see mackerels nevertheless being sold on the market, the sort of thing that was being brought up earlier. So is there a social, a psychological effect among fishers that's due to this sad effect of illegal fishing?
Really hoping to be asked that question today. This summer, our membership and fishermen across the maritime provinces were polled by Nanos, and it showed some really interesting things. I think one of the most important things it revealed was that 67% of harvesters in the Maritimes said they view current DFO management as a threat to the future of their fisheries. That's a really shocking statistic, and I think it should be front and center on the minister's desk to help to overcome that problem. And the follow-on effects are that there's a lack of respect on the water for frontline DFO CMP staff, which is not their fault and makes their jobs really difficult when they go aboard of our members' boats. Members who have just viewed, the resource that their families depend on being, fished in a totally unsustainable manner, and then they're attempting to abide by the law all the time. It makes them not as willing to be cordial with frontline DFO staff, and I think that's really unfortunate. But that lack of respect for the department and lack of respect for conservation measures is being bred by the department, also evidencing a lack of respect for conservation to our members.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. And we'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. First, if you could clarify, please, I think I've heard your last name pronounced a couple of different ways. Is it Mr. Sproul? Is that correct? Or Sproul? Sproul. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Mr. Sproul, I know that we've already covered quite a few questions, and I feel like you've given us some good information, and so perhaps I won't go on for too long, and then I'll go to Mr. McIsaac. But one thing I'm trying to understand, and I know it's a very complex issue, and I don't even want to try to pretend to understand all of the complexity and intricacies of the situation of what's happening in Nova Scotia. But we do know that we had a lot of learnings that came from, at least that's what the hope was, a lot of learnings from what occurred a few years ago with the Mi'kmaq in making sure that there was communication around Mi'kmaq conservation principles, the knowledge that was being used by Mi'kmaq fishers. And one thing that came up, at least to my knowledge, was that there was a breakdown in communication, that information wasn't being transferred appropriately to fishers, Indigenous and non-Indigenous fishers, which resulted in increased tensions. And so my question, I just wanted to highlight some of the things that you brought up. You brought up that you're not seeing reports being collected. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more around what information you're receiving from DFO around the actual data and reports of what's happening on the water, and maybe just a follow-up to that around what do you feel would be a good avenue to bring everybody to the table to have the same information, to see more collaborations and having the same information? I think it's just a vital piece here in moving forward. If you can provide some comments on that.
Thank you for the question. I actually think it's central to a resolution of the issue, and it's something that we have harped on for years to DFO, that if we could understand what the nature of rights implementation would be so that we could relate that to our members, that the integration would happen much more smoothly. The answer to the first part of your question is nothing. We don't receive any information. We've been kept totally in the dark as the government hides behind the nation-to-nation process. While we have great respect for the nation-to-nation process, there are other examples like the North Atlantic Fisheries Organization, where the government engages in nation-to-nation processes and also has the industry represented in a separate room at a table. So there's that mechanism for the government to share information with us and for us to provide our expertise to the government as well. But they refuse to do that. But I think more importantly, it's incumbent on the minister and incumbent on the government to create a place to bring First Nations harvesters and non-Indigenous harvesters back to the table again. Surely that responsibility falls to the government to find a way forward for all of us, and we're eager to sit down at the table with our First Nations partners. Ultimately, a lobster doesn't care who catches it, and we all intend to share the ocean together profitably into the future, and we really hope that the Minister of the Day can find a way to bring us back to the table together, because everything happening in silos of secrecy has not been conducive to the situation at all.
And just to clarify, Mr. Sproul, there has been no communications around creating such an opportunity to date.
Well, there's certainly been communication about it from the industry to the department, but no communication back. But I think the opportunity is still there, and I know that all the fishery leaders in the Maritimes are ready to sit at that table.
Thank you very much. My next question, nice to see you again, Mr. McIsaac. My question to you is, in previous meetings we had heard about much of the use of the term IUU being used to apply to illegal high seas fishing, often by foreign actors. And I'm hearing a lot about, of course, the real implications to local fisheries, more of the domestic side of what we're seeing around illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, and how that plays into the black markets. And I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on some of the examples that you were providing and whether you're seeing the accountability mechanisms and people who are out there holding those to account who are participating in illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that the use of the term really has come from the kind of international and the foreign fleets fishing into EEZs. You know, the creation of EEZs in the 1970s. We had along our coast, we had foreign fishing vessels fishing within sight of our coast. You know, up until 77, and then some encroachments on that after 77 as well. You know, so yeah, the market. You know, so we have this split jurisdiction. You know, between managing fisheries and managing processing and the markets, and so that creates a complicated kind of milieu to deal with some of the issues. The one on salmon, if DFO is managing the fishery and the fish are all over the market, what is the province supposed to do here? They're supposed to be, are they supposed to go out there and stop the sale of that fish when they're not the ones that are regulating the actual fishery? It's a real mixed bag here. So, yeah, I would put the responsibility of the harvest onto DFO and to prevent that. The issue about how much enforcement. Fishermen have been talking about kind of the illegal fishing in the Fraser River for more than 30 years. There was a few years ago when they were reporting that the department was confiscating something up to about 1,000 nets a year in the river. They're down to confiscating 200-300 now. But when they reported 1,000, they said that they were only getting about 10% of that. The number of fish or of legal fishing on the river was less than that in days for the actual commercial fishery. So yeah, the entire system appears broken, and we're heading to a place where we're not going to have legal commercial fisheries anymore because of the structure and the system that's been put in place.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start out, and thank you both for being available today for this important study. I'll start out with Mr. McIsaac. So that we have it in testimony, can you briefly describe what the situation was with the sale of Fraser River sockeye, the actual alleged illegal sale of Fraser River sockeye during a season or during a time when there had actually been no commercial season, so that we've got a brief testimony of what was taking place?
Sure. Last year, 2022, is a cycle year for sockeye. There was so that means that it's one of the larger returns expected. There was no commercial fishery anticipated on the Fraser River, and yet there was fishing going on all the way up the lower part of the Fraser River. There was pickup trucks selling sockeye salmon. There was Facebook advertisements of where to purchase sockeye salmon along the Fraser, and then unexpectedly the department opened the fishery, 6-hour opening for the commercial fishery, and so that kind of gave some legitimacy to the illegal sale of fish along the river. So that's kind of the picture that I would paint for it.
Okay, thank you. The amount of fish being advertised for sale prior to the opening, was it a few fish, or was it totes full of fish, or truckloads of fish? Can you describe roughly how many you think might have been involved?
I've just heard reports that there was, dumping of, when fish go off, they go off fairly quickly if they're not iced, dumping of thousands of fish along different points along the Fraser River. So I'm not sure how much of that illegally caught fish got into markets, but I would say it would be significant.
Okay, thank you. A 6-hour opening is pretty short. Has there ever been that short of an opening previously?
Oh yeah, there has been. Yeah.
Only on a one-time basis, a one-day basis, or has it been hours, different days of the week, or at different times? For 6 hours for an entire season?
Yeah, 6 hours for an entire season. No, we've been getting gradually less and less and less and less time. So that from 30 years ago to now, it's almost nothing that we're getting for time on the river.
Okay, thank you. I'll switch up now to Mr. Sproul. Mr. Sproul, what is needed in the way of addressing illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing for conservation of sustainable fisheries, whether it's lobster or any fisheries? What are a few key recommendations that you see are needed to address the concerns?
I think the first one centers around communications. There needs to be a clear communication to the fishing communities of Atlantic Canada about what FSC rights constitute and what they don't constitute. And I think that needs to come from the very top. It's a responsibility of the government and a responsibility of the minister. And in the absence of that, our communities are left in this vacuum where people are exploring what they can and can't do and figuring it out on their own. And that's what certainly is what's led to the conflict. That's priority one. And priority two is for the government to task reasonable levels of resources into places like St. Peter's Bay and St. Mary's Bay and directly target the problem to board and seize vessels which are clearly fishing outside of DFO-issued food, social, and ceremonial licenses. It's also important to point out that there are other losers here too. There are First Nations many First Nations who are operating food, social, and ceremonial fisheries within the rules, and they are certainly just as much a loser in this situation as our members are. And I think that thirdly there needs to be a recognition amongst First Nations communities that it's food that was intended for First Nations mouths, not for diversion, for profit, for people, and that they should demand better from their own governments who are engaging in that type of activity.
Thank you. I want to get one more quick question into Mr. McIsaac. I'm recalling back to the prawn tubbing issue, and I think you know what I mean by that. There seemed to be an inordinate amount of effort and resources put into what appeared to be a really irrelevant situation or minor situation. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Mr. McIsaac?
I totally agree. And why CMPA was focused on prawn tubbing never came to light. I would say, it goes back to, some kind of civilian oversight of CMP. They need to be, to be held accountable and answerable on what they're actually focusing their limited resources on. That, I think, was a complete waste of time. It was a complete waste of the House's time, the committee's time, and everybody else involved in it. I don't think it did anything, to reduce IUU fishing. I don't think it did anything but impact, legal harvesters.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. We'll now go to Mr. Henley for 5 minutes or less.
Thank you to both for appearing today. Mr. Sproul, I just wanted to start with you, and you talk about how the legal landings are now alarmingly low. I wonder, can you comment on whether that's like a seasonal effect, or are you seeing a cumulative effect in these areas where the landings are low?
Certainly, the lobster resource is cyclical. The catches go up and down throughout the years, and catches are affected by environmental factors and lots of other things. But we do believe that there is beginning to be a cumulative effect, especially in places like southwest Nova Scotia and eastern Cape Breton, where a lot of the fishery is taking place. And I think the important thing to point out is not the amount of lobster, but the location that the fisheries are being operated in, that they're very important, shallow, warm fishery spawning grounds that have never had fishing in them by, a self-imposed rule for more than 100 years from lobster fishermen, because we've understood the importance of what those places mean. So we believe the cumulative effect is not only related to the lobster that's coming ashore, but also to the damage to breeding females when they're in such a vulnerable state during their molt in the summertime. And I think because of that's why it's so important to deal with the issue.
So linking that back to your previous testimony, you were just talking about some of the recommendations, and I think you mentioned the need for engagement with First Nations, but also for First Nations to be elevating this issue. I mean, surely when it comes to actual conservation of the species, this is incredibly important for First Nations as well. What are you hearing so far from First Nations individuals or leaders in concerns to the impact on stocks?
Well, sadly, there's a huge lack of communication between fishery leaderships right now and First Nations leaderships in the Maritimes because of the unfortunate situation that unfolded in 2020. What I'll say about it is this, is that every fisher in Atlantic Canada recognizes that there's a direct link between people who are fishing out of season and First Nations who lease their access delivered in the Marshall Implementation Strategy to non-Indigenous fishing companies. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the people that are fishing out of season in places like St. Mary's Bay are citizens of nations where the entirety of their fishery access that's been delivered over the last 23 years is dispossessed from them, is leased by First Nations government for a direct economic benefit for the nation, but it really misses the real value of the Marshall Implementation, which is not, in our view, is not about lobsters on a wharf or dollars in a bank account. It's about creating a lasting legacy of prosperity for coastal First Nations, creating fishing families like our members. That was what we view as the real benefit that should be delivered to First Nations, and they're continually losing that by the government's refusal to put caveats on the access that require participation by only Indigenous people.
Thank you. And briefly to Mr. McIsaac, in your opening comments, you were referring to some international practices. You mentioned Japan. I think that you were there at a meeting and you observed some practices. Could you maybe elaborate on what we might be able to learn from other global examples?
Yeah, that could take a couple of days, but I would say in brief, their Fishing Act has one similarity to ours. It came out in 1868, same year, and that's where the similarity ends. They download the responsibility of fisheries management onto the prefecture, so which would be equivalent to our provinces or our regional governments, rather than doing it centralized. So all of the licensing for small-scale fisheries all goes through that prefecture, and the prefecture ensures that licensing is local, so that local ownership, local participation, all of the benefits are here in that local area. The DFO, I mean, we were just doing a beneficial ownership study of who owns, who gets the benefit of our fishing licenses. And DFO was really happy to report that 1 in 5 license holders wouldn't even respond to that, but they thought that only, 2% was foreign owned. That is, disrespectful of the question and disrespectful of our communities. We need to know who's benefiting, and it's only in the local communities that, that's really going to be cared about.
Thank you, Mr. Henley. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't much time, but all right. So if we move too quickly, let's say if you're in school and you can be punished even if you're a school child. Let's say if you mishandle a school bus, the fines can be extreme because the repercussions are considerable. It can cost the lives of school children. So I'm, just trying to give you something to work from here to help us understand. We know that we have sectors in the fisheries where the future of the resource is at issue. So if we could increase surveillance in such zones and also increase the fines, increase the penalties, do you think this would be beneficial for the future of our fisheries? Would this help us educate people?
I don't think it's as simple as an increase to the penalties. I heard a member of this committee suggest 2 weeks ago, as the committee was meeting on IUU, that he had heard from local CNP officers in his community that they, quote, closed their eyes for certain groups of fishermen. So I think I would harken back to my previous comments that it's more about the intent and the willingness of this government to equally enforce existing fisheries policy in the interim until the rights reconciliation process can move forward to a successful conclusion. And I think it's incumbent on the government to do that for two reasons: to protect, the base of the economy of Atlantic Canada, but also protect the future of the resource for those very rights holders who they're attempting to help, and inadvertently potentially damaging the ability for them to access their rights forever.
Bref, on pourrait conclure en disant.
So, all said and done, the conclusion would be that we need fair balance so that no one feels put upon in the general approach, the climate, and when you don't feel there's a bias, you're more likely to follow the law, respect the law. Is that correct? Is that the sort of recommendation we should be making to improve relations between the various groups and a better understanding of the situation with fairness?
I think that's a reasonable path forward, and I think it can also lead to the resolution of another key problem that I haven't mentioned, and it's that NANO's polling has also revealed that a majority of fishermen in the Maritimes feel that the biggest threat to their fisheries is Indigenous out-of-season fishing. 10 years ago, those same people viewed their Indigenous partners in the fishery as their greatest allies, especially in the fight, to preserve encroachment on our important fishing grounds by other offshore developers. So I think it's really sad that there's been a fracture of the two communities, and it's certainly incumbent on the government to bring us back together in the spirit of conservation and reconciliation.
Thank you, Madam Debienne. We'll finish up now with Ms. Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sproul, for being here today. I'm going to focus the remainder of my questions to Mr. McIsaac. Mr. McIsaac, I appreciate that my colleague, Mr. Arnold, brought up the prawn tubbing example that happened in British Columbia, because it's just such a good example of what happens when we have decisions being made by those who don't actually understand the fishery on the water. Perhaps good intentions, but I think the prawn tubbing example is just such a good example of when there's a lack of understanding of how it actually works on the water versus high level theoretically how one would like to see it work. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit around the importance that this work moving forward includes those who are on the water in the decision-making process, so that the steps forward are applicable and actually helpful on the water.
Yeah. That's a great question. Thank you for that. And, so where to start with that? Tying and linking to harvesters is critical for all different kinds of, components of the fisheries, for understanding what's going on in the water, for the science, understanding what science is, the data that science is actually collecting, helping interpret that. Helping to ensure that the benefits of the fishery are coming through the communities, and it's something that I would say kind of the whole social aspect of fisheries is one that DFO appears to be and has turned a blind eye on over the last 150 years. It doesn't seem to be, of interest to the department. What they're doing with, foreign, foreign beneficial ownership of our fishery is an example of that. But what they're doing with First Nations and, what they did in the Marshall decision by handing over licenses without, kind of thinking about what they, who's going to benefit from them and how they can actually be used to make sure that they are being used in the way that's intended. DFO sets the frame for all of that stuff, and yet doesn't pay attention to the real important matters of that. It's just like kind of the issue about setting a table for collaboration. DFO can set that table so that people can come together and help decide what's best to do with the fishery, but they're not doing that. They're not setting a table that is open for those kind of collaborative solutions.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. A little bit over. That concludes our committee meeting for today. I guess I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Sproul and Mr. McIsaac for sharing their valuable knowledge with the committee today as we work our way through this particular study. And Thursday, we will resume the study with the appearance of witnesses. I will let the committee know I won't be here on Thursday. I'll be out of town, and Mr. Arnold will be asked to chair. So the chance of him getting back at some people maybe somehow. But again, thank you to everyone, to our analysts, to our clerks, to our translation team, and everybody who made the meeting possible today to be such a success. Again, thank you to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, committee.